Welcome to Dinan. Today we're going to discuss the E90, E92 M3 Stage 1 suspension system, which is designed to retain the electronic dampers in the car. The suspension system includes a set of springs front and rear, spring perches in the front shock absorber bump stops, and rear shock mounts. Now the spring rate is increased 10%. That's because, one, the spring is fairly stiff on the M3 already, but the other reason is we want it to match the damping that's in the car and the electronic shock absorbers. Since we're not replacing those, we need to be careful about changing the spring rate too much. Okay? I want to spend a little bit of time discussing the bump stops and how the bump stops work. Okay? This is the original bump stop that comes in the car, and this is the Dinan one. And as you can see, it's a little bit shorter. This is the original spring perch that comes in the car. This is the Dinan one, and it's a little bit shorter. The reason we do this is, stock, the car only has 3/4 of an inch of travel between the bump stop and the shock body. And most springs that you buy lower the car an inch. So if you lower the car an inch and there's only 3/4 of an inch of travel, this is bottomed out and actually compressed 1/4 of an inch at ride height. This gets very stiff then when you load the car into a corner, and it causes the car to ride and handle poorly. Generally, the handling characteristic is a corner entry understeer, which means the front end plows when you enter a corner, and a corner exit oversteer, which means the back end steps out and goes sideways when you leave. That's because you've increased the spring rate, because these act like a progressive spring. The bump stop is very soft on the bottom, like a little lip here, and very firm on top. So the goal here is when this first touches, you can barely feel it, and as it compresses, the spring rate goes up. But the spring rate goes up fairly rapidly. So what we do is we shorten this device, and we shorten the spring perch as well. So once the car is lowered, you still have the same travel the car had stock. Okay? The goal here is to maintain a high ride quality as well as mechanical grip, because the suspension isn't bottomed out. The car will turn in a lot better, put down a lot more power, and ride a lot better, so you get everything. It just takes a few more pieces to get there. So I stacked all the parts up here so you can see what we're talking about in more detail. This is the stock spring perch and bump stop. This is the Dinan spring perch and bump stop for the front. And you can see the increased travel there. In the rear, this is the upper shock mount stock. This is the Dinan one. And again, you can see the increase in travel. So a lot of research goes in this. We spent close to a year driving the car around at high speed, making little adjustments to the travel, to the spring rate, to the absorption rate of bump stop, so you give the right feel for the car. The car's predictable and has great ride quality. Now, the other reason these things are designed the way they are is under slow speed corners, we want to make it so these don't touch. So when you're driving around town, they have a nice ride, but also that really good mechanical grip we were talking about. When the car goes faster and aerodynamic pressure pushes the car down, and you load the car harder to go into a corner, we want this to touch down and add a little bit of spring rate to the spring rate to give the car more support. We also want the front bump stop to bottom out a little bit before the rear bump stop, so when the car is loaded into a corner, you pick up a little bit of understeer at high speed, and the car doesn't want to spit itself sideways and scare you. So the tuning of these is very critical to get good results. You can't lower the car too much. You have to mind the travel and the other components that go with it to maintain a good handling suspension system. For more information, go to DinanCars.com or visit your local Dinan dealer.